Hey guys, my name is Vernon. This is my co-host Jay. Today on Sophomore Elite, we're going to talk about Brandon Aiyuk. All right, Jay. So in year two, what's your confidence in Brandon Aiyuk?
My confidence is about at 70%. It has nothing to do really with Aiyuk. We're going to discuss his skill set, which I'm very intrigued by. It's more so, the quarterback play. Debo's coming back healthy. Kittle's going to be back healthy. There's going to be a demand of targets that go along with Aiyuk. So that's my only hesitation. But I think that we could see a nice season from Aiyuk. How about you?
I could see how you could be pumping the brakes a little bit. I'm kind of with you, but I'm a little bit more confident. I'm thinking about 80% because I'm in love what he can do with the ball in his
Mhm.
hands, and it's crazy that he can put all that stuff together. We'll talk about more of that in the strengths, but really, I think that some of the things that are taking away from his upside, in people's eyes, as far as what I can tell, I think they're making too much of those things, like Kittle coming back, Debo coming back, the quarterback play, et cetera. I think those things are, you can look at those things swinging him either way. So,
Right. Yeah.
what do you think about what is the strength that's really contributing to that confidence level for you?
Oh man, well I'll tell you what. When I watched him in college, one of the things that he did have is a good release off the line of scrimmage, but I never really saw him have to use his hands, especially against press coverage. I saw that in his first year as a rookie, and that is something that's really got me impressed by him is the fact that he is doing things that I didn't see him do in college. And he ran mostly go routes and hitches, where he's got a lot more of an expanded route tree that we saw from his rookie season. So that release off the line of scrimmage with good use of his hands, being physical with his hands at the line of scrimmage, how he separates at the top of his route also has some nice moves, good footwork. That is something that has me a lot higher on Aiyuk than I did when he was first coming out as a rookie. I didn't see that from him in college. And it's nice to see him do things that I didn't even think he was capable of doing. So that as far as the strength, it has everything to do with the start of how he is at the line of scrimmage for me.
Man, nice. I definitely saw some of those things too, right? Like, like I said, the release, his ability to run routes, his quickness in doing so, use of hands. I love all of that. But one of the things that really kind of puts the cherry on top of all of those things that are coming together is his competitive toughness, man. And I think that
Mm.
that's actually going to serve him when he has to deal with more difficult situations as he moves forward. And it's actually going to be one of those things that helps contribute to why he's going to be targeted a little bit more than people think, with Kittle and Debo also being in that on the field with him, right? So,
Right.
those are some of the things that I'm thinking about as far as his strengths.
Yeah, and you bring up the competitive toughness part. That has a lot to do with how he does as far as body control and adjustment to the ball, regardless of pursuit angle of a defender. Like he'll take a hit and he'll still catch the ball and he'll catch it outside of his frame, haul it in, secure it. So I am so glad you brought that competitive toughness because that's a big portion of what is making me feel a lot more confident about him making a rise this coming season.
All right, Jay. So we talked a lot about his strengths, and I think he got almost a complete package there. But do you have any concerns moving into his second year?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call it a concern, but just something I haven't necessarily seen from him at the collegiate level or in the NFL yet. And that's just how he would react in a contested situation. I'm wondering has he gotten that good at separating that he doesn't put himself in that situation to have to contest the catch? But if he was and he was going against, a bigger DB, which they have in the NFL now compared to what he played against in college, how would he do? Would he able to, climb the ladder and get to the top and secure the catch? Or would he have trouble with that? So more so, I want to see that, and I think I'll be looking for that a lot in his sophomore season. But that would be the concern I have right now. How about you, Vern? What did you see that might be a weakness that maybe I'm missing here?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of like what you're talking about with this contested catch, because it's all about like how he goes in those one-on-one situations. So with those one-on-one situations, one of the challenges that the tape revealed to me was where he was going against those elite cornerbacks, like your
Mm.
Tre'Davious Whites, your Jalen Ramseys, your Xavier Howards, like those guys. There's not too many of those elite cornerbacks in the NFL, so it might not be too big of a concern. But when I saw him work against Tre'Davious White specifically, it just seemed like Tre'Davious White is like in his head, not like, in his head as far as like psyching him out and taking him out of his game, but just was in sync with his steps, right? And that's like, wow, that's crazy that he's able to do that. But it might not be too big of a concern because I think that Ayuk is up to the challenge and that competitive toughness we talked about earlier. And he was able to, throughout the game, as the game kind of evolved, he's just able to try and find a way to get open, regardless of how good Tre'Davious White was playing him, right? And he wasn't winning all the time at that point, but he was like just trying to find a way to win. And I think that that's going to come through in his skill set when it comes down to how he evolves moving here from this point forward, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think we both are on the same pages. We really just want to see how he does against those elite defenders, especially that have the size too. I want to see how he does with that. Can he get out of a situation where he gets caught up and, he doesn't have the swim or the swipe to really separate, how will he handle himself in those situations? So that's a great point you brought up.
Yeah. All I know is that this dude ain't scared and he's up for the challenge.
He wasn't scared in college either. He always fights for yards, so you got to love that about him.
All right, Jay. So we kind of have a good idea of who Brandon Aiyuk is as a player, but he plays in an offense, and that offense is going to influence his production. How do you feel about this offense and how it's going to influence his sophomore year?
Well, something we saw last season, Vernon, is that even with subpar quarterback play, he was still able to produce. And he played a lot better and had a much better skill set going into the NFL than I ever expected. So I feel really good about that part. It's really just a scheme. It's a run-heavy offense. You got Trey Lance, who's probably going to start at some point. He's a runner. So that's going to take a little bit away from the opportunity and upside of Brandon Aiyuk. And then you also have a healthy George Kittle and a Deebo Samuel who should be healthy coming back, and they're going to demand targets as well. So it's that target distribution along with the run heavy offense that makes me think, is this going to be a guy who gets to that 1,000 yards, which I don't think he will, but I think he'll still be very productive and get enough touchdowns to be a viable fantasy starter for us.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you brought up that, possibly not reaching that 1,000 yards because, the line on him right now is 875 and a half yards over this season. And I think that's low. I really think he's going to exceed that, especially given that he put up like about 750 over 12 games last season, right? So let's say he has a pretty healthy season and he does like 15 games ish. I think he's going to hit that 1,000 yard mark. And he's going to have the touchdowns to go with it. But I mostly believe this because I think Trey Lance is going to arrive sooner than later. And I think that the upside of Lance, especially with the deep ball, extending plays, things like that, is going to be pretty insane. And it's really going to benefit Aiyuk along with others in the offense. George Kittle, yes, he's gonna demand targets.
Yeah.
Deebo is going to demand targets, especially when they're healthy. I get that. But the thing is that what's that going to do? It's going to force the defense to. They're not going to be able to double Aiyuk as often. They're probably not going to be able to just marry their CB1 to Aiyuk for the entire game. And the running game, yes, it's going to be effective in high volume, but at the same time, that's going to give them crazy opportunities for those big plays and play action. And I'm just more excited than I could even think about with how he's going to fit in this offense long term.
Yeah, I think that line is pretty spot on from what I see. I think the biggest thing for me is there's offenses that have those tight end ones, the Travis Kelce's, the George Kittles, those secondary receivers, not like the Tyreek Hills, but the other ones, which could be Brandon Aiyuk with Deebo Samuel there. They usually don't produce as much because the tight end is basically the wide receiver one. And we have to remember George Kittle missed some time last year, which allowed Aiyuk to get more productivity and get those targets. So that's something that is just keeping me a little bit hesitant. But like you and I have talked about with this episode, his skill set, it would not surprise me if he exceeds my expectations at all.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think that, we're just going to have to see what happens in year two. And that's going to be it for this episode of Sophomore Elite. Get at us on Twitter. We like to engage with you guys, like, share, subscribe, comment, or whatever you like to do. But Jay, where can these guys find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at All Purpose Scout. I'm with the DevyWatch, DevyWatch.com. Do high school recruiting, college scouting, and a lot of what you can expect from the players in college once they get to the NFL. So some good fantasy takes. But Vern, I appreciate you letting me go first. Can you tell the good people where they can find you?
Yeah, man, you can find me right here on my Twitter handle at FFB_Vern. You'll see me mostly put stuff up there on Twitter. I do write occasionally for the Dynasty Nerds, and I do have a project coming down the road that I will reveal in due time. But For now, we'll see you again soon, and just catch us next time on Sophomore League so you can buy guys on the cheap.